it comes to buying a home, there are a few questions you need to ask yourself and a few more that you need to ask your agent. So how can you find the best home for your lifestyle? Well, Steve Israel is the president of Buyer's Agent, and he has it's Buyer's Edge, isn't it?
Yes,
Buyer's Edge. So sorry about that,
okay.
Steve. And he has some ideas about questions that we should ask. Hi, Steve. Good to see you.
Great to see you.
First of all, when we're buying a house, why do we need a buyer's agent?
Well, it's really the largest decision that most people make in their life, in their lifetime. Oftentimes people make it 3 or 4 times, but it's a huge financial decision, and so you want to make sure that you have somebody who's actually representing your interest and helping you make a good decision about how to invest your money.
Because years ago, before this buyer agency thing came to be, it was you would have the realtor that would work for sort of both sides. It it would take the buyer around, but really it was working for the seller, right?
Right, and that's actually true. They were in the older days, 20 years ago or so. Everybody actually did represent the seller, and with the advent of buyer agency, which started about 20 years ago. People started representing buyers and sellers. And our group, which is actually a national group now, although we're a local firm, just represents buyers. So there's actually some choices in the marketplace for people, where you can work with a company that represents sellers and also represents buyers. And obviously that presents a whole bunch of conflicts of interest. Sure. Or, in our case, you can be represented by somebody whose company only really represents buyers, and those are called exclusive buyer's agents.
Okay, so if you're going to go with a buyer's agent, you need to have an agreement beforehand before you set out on your search. So before you even go to that contract, you need to ask some questions. Let's go through some things that you should ask your buyer's agent.
Well, I think ultimately, there are 2 different types of buyer's agents. Buyer's agents who work for companies who also list properties for sale, and companies who just represent buyers. And so obviously, if you're working with somebody who's a buyer's agent who works for one of the companies who represents sellers also, you need to understand what happens contractually if you've hired them to represent your interest, and now they're also showing you a property that's listed by themselves or by their company. And so obviously at that point there's a conflict about how much they can do for you, and can they really advise you and negotiate the lower price when they're under contract with the seller to get the highest price.
So first of all, you need to know if they're experienced.
Experience is huge, and especially in a market like ours. The fact of the matter is that the complications oftentimes come from people in the business who everybody has a friend in the real estate business. And it's great to have friends in the real estate business, and we always think that it's nice when you can go and share your business with your friends. But the fact of the matter is that it's a huge financial decision. You should have the most experienced person who's also in a position to do the best job for you.
And you don't want to blow 3 months of this prime spring market on somebody that may not be in your best interest.
Right. Well, it's an interesting time because, of course, right now in the Washington market, it's really a historic opportunity for people. Prices went way, way up, and then in some areas, although not across the board, in some areas they dropped down, and some parts of our market were really pummeled in this foreclosure and short sale, scenario. And so, as a result of that, there are real opportunities for buyers to buy great properties at reasonable prices, and also with interest rates that are actually at historic lows still today. And so, it's a great time to be in the market and be well advised. So,
along with experience, you need to know if the agent knows your neighborhood in particular. Are they a neighborhood specialist?
Well, and this is an interesting question. It's one of the biggest issues in the real estate business. Is if you're a listing agent and you're selling lots of houses, clearly having inside knowledge about a neighborhood is a good thing. As a buyer, if you go to an agent who is a neighborhood specialist, that means that they're likely also the agent who has the most listings, who represents the most sellers, and as a result has the most conflicts of interest. In addition to which, they also would be in a position where they're kind of duty-bound to keep prices up in their own communities. So looking for a neighborhood specialist, if you're a buyer, may not be the best thing. And even if you're a seller, if you're working with the agent who really covers the neighborhood well, how are they going to compare your house to other listings that they have? And are they going to pitch your house over another listing that's the same price range. So there are a lot of conflicts that people have in the business, and it's important to understand those at the beginning of the process.
Definitely so. And also, a question to ask might be, how will you help me choose to negotiate the right property and the right price for the right property?
Right. One of the things that in our company, what we really tell people that we do, and that the reason that people hire us and pay us is that it's easy to go find a property on the internet today. Everybody has their little searches set up on all of these different websites, so it's simple to find properties. What we get paid for, what really is an important part of our job, is to help people evaluate properties correctly. And that means that taking into account the locations, the neighborhoods, the lots, the way that water flows, and roof systems, and heating systems, and all of these different pieces of what makes up the value of one property versus another. And then obviously set with their criteria and what they want to do, we can help them essentially evaluate properties correctly and then go to bat for them to actually negotiate the best price on the best terms.
Okay. Well, the spring market's just taking off, so we'll have to wait and see what it does. Right. A lot of excitement though.
It's an exciting time.
Yeah. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks
Steve Israel, Buyer's Edge.
Thank you. Bye-bye.